Hey guys, so today I'm going to be giving you a crash course on how to color grade with Davinci Resolve 16. And what's cool is that we're actually going to be using this clip right here. So let's go ahead and dive in. So we're going to go ahead and open up the color panel on the bottom. This page is pretty confusing, especially if this is the first time you're looking at it. So I'll go ahead and break that down for us. In the top left over here, that is just our preview panel. Pretty simple. Just to the right of that, we have the node tree. And what's cool about nodes versus layers, if you're familiar with Premiere Pro or After Effects, is that if you think of layers as one-dimensional, right, they just go up or down. Nodes are actually two-dimensional, so they can go up or down or left and right. So it's basically just a flow chart. Nodes at the beginning will affect nodes at the end. Pretty simple. Immediately to the right of that, we have our effects tab open, which we actually won't use this time. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit open effects, which will close that. And that'll expand the node tree. So we have more space to work with, which is always good. Sort of right here in the middle, this is our clips panel. So if I actually go back to the edit page, I just grab this clip, copy it and paste it. And we go back there, you'll see that there's two clips. So in a normal video, you'd have, a couple clips, and this will show each one. So you can make sure you can skip ahead to each one and make sure it's color graded nice and matches nice. Go ahead and delete that second clip we just made. I'm also going to take the time to mute my phone. If you can't tell, this is sort of like my first legitimate YouTube video I'm making, so it's kind of a work in progress right now. Alright, now that my phone is muted, let's dive in even more. So back to the color page. On the bottom, to the right, we have our vector scope. And this is actually just your scopes panel in general. So you can switch that over to your waveform, your parade, your histogram, and your chromaticity. This is all super technical stuff. We'll get into that a little bit later. Basically, I mostly live in waveform or vector scope. And then to the left, this is sort of where we have our actual control panels. So just starting from left to right, we have our camera raw panel. So if we're shooting on a camera that supports raw, such as Blackmagic, Red, and Ari, or you're using an external recorder like at a Shogun, you can actually come into here and change your camera settings in post, which is super amazing, super powerful. I actually work a lot with Blackmagic cameras, so let me know if you want to see a video of me sort of going over the features of RAW. Right to the right of that, we have our color match panel. This is super powerful. We're not going to get too into it right now. We have our color wheels, which this is going to be sort of your bread and butter for color grading, especially in Resolve. So, you have your lift, which is your shadows, gamma, midtones, gain, highlights. That's just translating for, people who are familiar with Premiere Pro. I'm not super sure what they are called in Final Cut, just because I don't really have much experience with Final Cut. Then you can also switch that to bars or log. Log is a little different how it affects the image. Basically, it will only grab the highlights and only grab the shadows, which again is cool, but just stick with sort of your primary color wheels. To the right of that, we have the RGB Mixer. If you want your red to be a little more green, you can do that. If you don't have to. To the right of that, we have our motion effects, and what you're going to use this mostly for is going to be your noise reduction. Then we have our curves, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with if you're learning how to color grade. And what's nice is that, we have our standard curve where you're going to make your S curve. Then we have a hue versus saturation, hue versus luminance versus saturation, and saturation versus saturation curve. So we have a ton of control over the image just in this one panel. Next, we have our qualifier. So what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to just key specific parts of the image affect only that. This is super powerful. We're actually going to use this to correct my skin tone in post. Now we have our power windows. And these are just masks, just predetermined masks. You can make your own curves or, your own polygon. Comes preloaded with a rectangle, a circle, or a gradient. We have our motion tracker. Super powerful, fast motion tracker. We're not going to use it in this video. Let me know if you want me to make a video featuring it though. Next, we have our blur. In this panel, we also have sharpening and our mist. So we actually are going to reduce the blur a little bit in post. And that's just going to sort of bring out some features like in your eyes, for instance. Next, we have our key. So basically this is just going to affect our input or output of the image. So say we put a LUT on this on a node, but we don't want it on at 100%. You would go over into your key, and then in your key output, you would bring the gain down a little bit. Or if it looks really good and you want actually just a little bit more, maybe like 1.1, you can go up to that. And next we have our sizing. We're not going to mess with it, but if you want to zoom in this panel, you can. All right, so I will get started with showing you sort of my basic node tree. So what we're going to do is hit Option S on Mac or Alt S on Windows, and that is just going to add a new node. So I'm going to hit it a couple more times. 2, 3, 4. So I'm actually only going to use these 5 nodes to color grade this image. And this one has an effect on it. I'm just going to delete it instead of trying to find which effect stayed on it. So generally, when you're setting up your node tree, you want to make it so that your first node is highest and the most to the left. Your last node is on the bottom and closest to the right. And that's just going to help with general organization. And also, as you can see, these lines sort of tell you where everything is flowing. So I know that this is node 1, right? So we can actually change node 1 just to go straight to the output if we wanted to. We don't want that. So I'm just going to drag that back down to node 2. So where I actually like to start when I'm color grading is right in the middle, which may sound a little weird, but trust me, it all makes sense. And you'll realize that in a little bit. So we start with our middle node, node 3. We open up the LUTs panel up at the top left. And that is just going to show us all of the LUTs that we have in our computer. So Resolve actually comes preloaded with a bunch, like all these I'm showing you are preloaded LUTs. A lot of them are utilities such as log to Rec 709 or Rec 2020. This is actually Sony S-Log3 to Rec 709, which S-Log3 is actually what we shot in. But we're actually not going to use this LUT. I have one that I like a lot more. So we just click our Sony menu down here, scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to use the Sony Natural Rec 709 version 1. This is a LUT from Buttery Films. It's a fantastic LUT, link down below. If you're shooting with Sony and you're shooting S-Log, highly recommend grabbing this pack. Comes with a whole buttload. Like, look, all these LUTs are just from them. And they actually just released some new film LUTs that I don't have loaded on this computer yet, but they look fantastic. So I'm just going to double click, and that applied the LUT over here. Then I'm going to hit the LUT menu at the top again. That's going to make sure our preview is nice and big. And if at any point you want a full scale preview of your footage, just hit P, and that is just a program feed from your timeline straight to your monitor. So, a nice full screen image. So right away, we can sort of tell this is no color grading at all. We put the LUT on, bam, it has saturation now. So, just looking at it right now, everything is still a little washed out. Everything's still basically some shade of gray. The red is red, same in the background, a little bit of a different red. And then we have nice green here. But then the rest is pretty much just gray. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add a little bit of contrast into the image. So I just selected node 2, the node directly before the LUT. I'm going to make sure my waveform is open. And then I'm going to use our color wheels. So if you grab this little scroll wheel at the bottom, if you drag it to the left, that makes it darker. If you drag it to the right, that makes it brighter. So basically, I'm just going to lower that down a little bit. Right about there. And when you are using your color wheels, you want to make sure that you are affecting your lift, your shadows first. And then you go into your highlights or your gain, which we're going to do right now. Bring that to about there. We have some clipping in the window right there. It's not the biggest deal. I'm not too upset about it. And then you sort of affect your gamma next. And that's your midtones, right? That's sort of where you want your skin tones to be. I'm gonna bring a little bit of light back into it. I'm actually also just going to go ahead and play. Make it full screen. All right. So with my lighting, I sort of have a very bright side of my face and a very dark side of my face, right? So what I'm going to do to help that is actually bring the bright side down a little bit. Back to full menu. So you see how that evened it out a little bit more? It's looking pretty nice. So I'm going to exit this again. Next, S-Log3 Sony footage can tend to be kind of noisy, especially in the darks. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna zoom in a crazy amount. Disregard the unkempt beard. We're gonna find some shadows. I'm actually gonna go to the right over here. This is probably our darkest part of the image, right here under my couch. And then we are going to open up our motion panel down here, our motion effects. And we're gonna do some noise reduction. So we're gonna do temporal noise reduction. I'm going to set that to 3. That's basically going to look ahead and behind 3 frames, average out the amount of noise, the digital noise that's in there, and then remove it. So it's a super fast and effective way of just removing, nasty, gross digital noise. So we can bring that threshold up. Make sure this stays chained, UMA and chroma. Let's go down to 11. And then with that node selected, you can still hit Command D to disable or enable the node. So you can see that kind of did a lot. And then to see it over the full image, again, just hit P for full screen. Disable, enable, or disable, enable, disable, enable. So you can sort of see how much that did, especially right here along the wood of my shelf. That's with noise reduction off. That's with it on. You can sort of see it's taking some detail out of my beard, but we're actually going to add that back in later. And then here under the couch, you can still see that, yep. And on the pillow too. So I'm pretty happy with that. If anything, I'm actually going to go ahead and just do some spatial noise reduction, which is sort of, the more normal noise reduction. Doesn't look ahead 3 frames and back. It just says, hey, let's make it a little blurry. So I'm gonna unchain Luma and Chroma. For the Luma, I'm just gonna change that. You don't wanna affect that this much. This is basically a Gaussian blur. I'm just gonna hit 2, hit enter. Go back to full screen. So noise reduction on and off. It's looking pretty good. Especially like over here in the curtain. You can see a ton of noise. Turning it on removes pretty much all of it. It's looking pretty good. All right, so we are now just about halfway done with our color grade. So now I'm gonna move on to our 4th node. The 4th node might be my favorite node for one reason. This is where we get to pull our key of our skin tone. I just think it's fun and cool because I am a huge nerd. So I'm going to select our qualifier. And what we're gonna do to get a nice, good key of our skin tones, you actually wanna go right across the forehead. And that's because typically you're going to capture all the lights that are hitting you is going to affect your forehead in some way. So like you can see the light off to my left side here is hitting the side of my face, and then it's also actually hitting my ceiling and backing back down and hitting my front. And then we have some of the light from the window coming in and affecting this side of my head. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag all the way across my forehead and then zoom back out. Now that looks like it did literally nothing, but wait. You click this little magic wand up here, highlight, and that will show you only the node that you're on. So if I do that, you can see what I selected with that key. So zoom back in, I pretty much selected all of my skin, even a little bit of my teeth, and some of the background. So this is actually a super sloppy key, and that is because there's still not a ton of contrast in the image. A lot of the background is the same value as me, right? Or the same brightness. So to pull a better key, I'm just straight up gonna try again. Maybe start a little more center, right there. That's pretty decent. Maybe, yeah, that's actually pretty decent. I'm happy with that. We can also mess around with some settings down here. The matte finesse. And that's gonna help us sort of, you know, not just grab our key, make it red. If I leave our highlight, it's super harsh lines. It has no chill. We want a little bit of chill. So we center that again. Blur radius, you blast it. I'm gonna go all the way up to about 48. So you can see it just takes harsh edges, makes them a lot softer. Turn that back down to 0 so you can see like what that looks like trash. 48. Smooths it out a lot more. I'm also going to hit denoise a little bit. About 8, I'm happy with that. Our clean black and clean white is good to just make sure, you know, some of the background elements that don't quite have the exact tone that you're looking for, you can remove that with clean black and clean white. So clean black, bring that up just a little bit, about there. So that did remove some of my lips, nose, some of my chin right here, but it removed a ton of that background. See if I bring that back down, back in, back down, back in. Probably gonna end up around 30. Clean white is the same, but opposite. So I'm just gonna actually hit that a little bit more. About 6. Have a nice, good selection of my face. A little bit of my hair too. All right, so now we get to switch over to our vector scope. And the vector scope is basically, you take your waveform and you fold it and make it a circle. I don't know how that was supposed to be a circle. Forgive me. And then this line right here, you want to make sure that this line is on. So to do that, you open up your settings directly to the right of the word vector scope. And then show skin tone indicator. So your skin tone indicator is basically the perfect tone that you want anybody's skin to be. Doesn't matter if they're black or white or Asian. You want that to be their skin tone. Really the biggest difference would be their value, right? How bright or dark their skin is. So just to get that line, you can see it's a little yellow, which my face also looks a little yellow, especially compared to the rest of the scene. We just go back over to our color wheels, and then we grab our offset. Our offset affects the entire image. So if I bring that down, it'll bring everything down. If I bring it up, it brings everything up. So what we do is we literally just grab the middle of the circle, and then we can pull it any direction we want to add some color to it. we want to pull it a little bit to the top and right. And then we're just going to line that up directly onto that line. Click highlight off. And then you can see the difference it made in my skin tone. So that's turning it off, turning it back on. Put this full screen so it's easier to see. Off, on, off, on. Added a lot of life back to my skin. I kind of look like a frog without it. So it looks a lot nicer. Exit that. And then this last node, super simple. We're just gonna add a little bit of sharpening back in. General rule of thumb, about 0.47 is where you want to be. So you just go down here to your radius, select red, 0.47. That affects red, green, and blue. And then I'll bring this back full screen. Disable it, enable it, disable, enable. So again, I'm not sure how much of this you're actually going to see with YouTube compression. I will zoom in a lot down here onto my beard. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that doing the noise reduction actually lost a lot of detail on my beard, like that. If I turn it back on, you can see individual strands again. I'll zoom in on my eyes. This is where it makes a big difference. Off, on, off, on. Or even like on my skin. The noise reduction pretty much removed all my pores, which is a good thing. But if you turn it back on, you can see the edges of your face, some of the pores again. Again, I shot this in 4K, so you kind of want to have it look like 4K. Zoom in, fit. All right, now this looks pretty good. If you ever want to see how your footage looked before you even touched it, you just go up to the top here, click this button. This is the bypass color grades and fusion effects button. In layman's terms, it turns your color grade off. Bam. I think I'm happy with it. So from here, go back to our edit page, we'll play it. All right, and once you're happy with it, you can hit export. I'm gonna go to the folder I created for this, color grade this clip. I'm very creative with my naming. I'm going to call this clip is color graded. Save. QuickTime H264. I'm going to go up to 4K. I'm actually going to go back and make sure my timeline settings are in 4K, which I don't think they are. I think I defaulted to 1080 for this. There we go. Actually, I'll jump back into the color panel again so you guys can see how crispy that sharpen is, especially in 4K. So that's sharpen off, sharpen on, sharpen off, sharpen on. Off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Turn the noise reduction off as well, so you can see how much noise that actually did remove. Noise reduction on, sharpening on. All right, so back to our render or deliver page. Clip is color graded, 4K, 23.976, or basically 24 frames a second, tile. So I usually just manually enter the bitrate that I want. This is 4K. I'm also going to be uploading it to YouTube, which is going to crush it. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this to 15,000. You can mostly leave everything to auto. Add to render queue, hit render, and then we let it juice out. Awesome, so that finished rendering in 27 seconds. You can right click, reveal in Finder. Takes you straight to the clip you exported. And then you can watch it. All right, and that is basically how you color grade any footage in Davinci Resolve 16. Now, obviously, depending on what camera or gamut you shot in, you want to change your LUT or some of the workflow a little bit. That is the basics of the color panel. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, smash that notification bell. You know, man, you know how YouTube works. All right, thanks for hanging out. Peace.